Alright, economics video. Yay, been a while. So it's going to be the whole theory of economics, and I'm just going to play with the paper again. Drawing. And so I'll just make it up as I go along in terms of what's the themes are. And I just kind of want to do it in this pro and con kind of way, like here is a theory of the truth, and see if anybody comes up with an opposing theory of how the world works. And see if there's some way to make that into something. There's this idea of making arguments and just improving them over time in some sort of competitive way. Seems like a good idea. Like there should be two adversaries, and even if they're just figureheads, even if they're just things that you use as markers for the two sides, and they're fed by other people or other institutions or other things, the idea of just concentrating the argument through two mouths makes a lot of sense to me. But anyway, we'll see what we can do. Get people to, I don't know, we'll see. Lots of projects. So anyway, alright, so let's just go back to the beginning. Okay, the economy. You're just basically talking about exchanges between people, right? I mean, of value. So you have the idea of we have something of value. In terms of we need stuff. We gotta live in a house, and and we have to bargain with each other to live our lives. Somebody else might have gotten some food, and we need some apples, or they need this, or that kind of thing. So we're just bargaining to make each other's lives more comfortable. We go out and try to satisfy the need, and we sometimes can do that much more efficiently if we work together. If we make arrangements with each other to help out, because sometimes the log's too heavy to lift, that kind of thing. And trying to do it as one individual could take 10 years, and doing it as 3 people can take 4 minutes. And so there's efficiency. There, that's a good word. C. There, close enough. Anyway, so you have value and you have efficiency. Really important word. So I guess I'll highlight the important words with and circle. Okay, we'll do that for starters. Efficiency is a big one. Value is a big one. Alright, so then you come up with this way to monetize, to establish a standard for. Standard's a good word, so we use that. Standard. So you come up with the idea of currency. Okay, it makes this exchanging of value much easier, right? So now you can exchange value because you have this paper stuff that establishes it's worth an established amount of sheep or ducks or frogs or fish or whatever. And it just makes, now you don't have to sit there and have the big pile of stuff and give somebody stuff. And you certainly don't have to do stupid exchanges like, okay, I'll babysit your kids and then later tonight you'll cook my dinner. And it'd be really stupid and inconvenient for me to give you a whole flock of sheep and then take them back again, 4 hours later. And so, having currency, money, makes it possible so you don't have to do that kind of bullshit like, walk the sheep all the way over to the other guy's house and put them in the pen and then walk all the way home and blah, blah, blah. So it's an efficiency thing. So again, efficiency is what creates money. So money is just created out of the necessity to have efficiency in transactions. Yeah. Actions. Okay. Spelling. And so yeah, that's the not the explicit detailed origins, but that's basically the origins of money. Is that the fact is improved efficiency in transactions, and so that's basically its origins. So all those people with conspiracies, it's all a money problem. It's not really a money problem. Money is just a contract. It just makes it really easy to make a deal with somebody so you don't get screwed, right? So you don't have to wait for somebody's promises. They don't you help them build their house and then they promise they're going to help you build your house, but they drop dead. So if you have money, you don't have to worry about a promise because the guy can pay you for working for him, and then you can pay him back when he works for you. And so then everything's caught up, and there's no dependency on, promises. Because promises are sort of made to be broken kind of thing. So yeah, money makes it possible to guarantee transactions. Yes, that's a good word. T-E-E. Yeah, guarantee. Yeah, yes, everything's caught up and everything's efficient. Alright, so now we get into the economy stuff. So what's going on in the real world of the economy? I thought there'd be more like humans. You know, put a human here just for the hell of it, just because, you know, I wanted to have people in the drawing. Alright, so what do we have? We have two things of value in the current economy, right? I mean, we have two things of known value. We know work, okay? Like there's work, okay? You go to work, okay? You get paid money. And I guess it has to be established that, unfortunately, there's two kinds of work, right? So we have to sort of establish that, you know, work is a tricky thing, because there's really productive work, and then there's people who, you know, are crank calling you. You know, so I just put down crank callers because, yeah, they're working, they're getting paid to call you up and try to steal your money, but they're basically thieves. So they're working as thieves. Okay, they're not doing productive work, they're doing completely unproductive work. And so, you know, a huge part of our economy is run on all this really inefficient work. So you can make the list, right? I mean, preposterously unnecessary bureaucracies, you know, paperwork, you know, I should paper, I can spell paper. So you got all this unnecessary paper shit, you know, that's in small print, right? Small print, oh, small print. I mean, we know that all that is just established to steal money, right? I mean, just to steal value by pretending to give somebody something, but you're not really giving them something. It's like the YouTube terms of service, right? It's a lie. You know, it's just a gimmick to take away all your rights and give them rights that they shouldn't even, they have no right to even take possession of. They have no right to even, yeah, I mean, they're basically taking rights to like your blood or your liver or something. They have no right to these things. And they're just extorting you in this contract that you're not going to read to commit to this thing, so they can just take advantage. And so that's not productive work. So anyway, see, so let's just establish there's two kinds of work. Okay, there's crap work that has no social value, and then there's productive work like repairing electrical lines or putting gas pipe into the ground or building houses or building roads. There's constructive, productive, value-rich, durable work. And then there's this other crap that most people are doing. Alright, so that's one thing. So you got work is one of the value things. And then the other value thing is ownership. Right. It pays. Okay, you can make a living being an owner. Alright, so you just sit back, say, I own, and I demand payment. So these are the two things that have to be paid by our system, is the owners and the workers. Okay, and the problem is obviously you can kind of figure out that if you're paying out money, okay, for people to be crooks, to steal money, ooh, that's really dumb. I mean, rewarding people for, you know, making connivery advertisings and doing all kinds of other stuff that's just totally useless crap. You know, that's just not smart, and that diminishes the value of overall of work, right? So you have this pool of work that's getting a percentage of the dollar of our total productive value as a people. So this is our total value. So these two things, if you went full circle, they make the money. Okay, these whatever, this stuff. And what I'm going to argue is the only thing that really has any value, that all this value is made out of one thing: productive workers. So in a sense, they do all of this, and this is an illusion. These guys don't do shit. Okay, owners don't do anything of value. They just take. So this is all they do. This arrow thing, they just take money, and then they waste it in silly ways, like, you know, $2 million birthday party, PAR Party. So they have $2 million parties, okay, that last for one day, and all this stuff is done. People go there to work, they manufacture stuff, they do all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. They get paid money, which is nice, but it's completely socially useless work. And so that's what rich people, you know, well, owners are usually rich, and they just become wasters. They squander this stuff. So people go into coal mines to make this money stuff. You know, so this has like blood on it. You know, there's blood on money. Okay, it's got sweat. It's got sacrifice. I mean, so this is just, you know, it's money is, ooh, it's got the you know, it's got the oil, the real oily blood all over it in terms of what it buys, you know, what it you know, what it's made out of, the value it represents. It's a representation of value, and the value is orphans and all kinds of horrors and getting your arm cut off at work and all kinds of crap. And that's what it's made out of, and then these rich people just squander the fuck out of it. They just piss it away. They piss away that blood and sweat, and then they do it in some kind of manner where they say their money, so they make some money, like a $100, and then they'll pay, you know, 13% tax on that income, that money coming in. And this worker guy, yeah, he'll pay 40% for working, for sweating, for doing something productive, you know, for climbing up a telephone pole and do all that shit. He pays 40% tax. This asshole just sits on the money and he pays 13%. I mean, what the hell is that crap? That doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, quite obviously, it's just stupid. So anyway, I want to get more to the construct here. So, you know, now we have this new institutions. Okay, so anyway, the basic point is that this is unearned. Most of this ownership, right? Most of the people who have possession, all right, they didn't do the actual work to gain the possession. They inherited it from somebody. Even people like Donald Trump inherited $10 million in New York real estate in like 1965 or whatever the fuck it was. You know, I mean, you know, most of these people aren't self-made in any real self-made way. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, so they actually made more money. All right, we'll give them credit for that. But it's not like they started from like washing dishes in a 7-Eleven. I mean, that's not where this guys came from. And so, like I said, most of the people owning the stuff now, it's like Walmart. You know, the guy who made Walmart's dead. And it's all just the Loafer family that owns it now. You know, and so they didn't really earn it, right? They just got born into it and said, ha ha ha, you know, I'm rich, you're not. I'm going to piss it away. It's just bullshit. You know, the idea that we should be, you know, that there's only one piece. So you got this huge hunk of money going to these people that didn't earn it. Then you got another hunk of money going to these assholes that are just crooks, right? They're crank caller crooks. And so you got this tiny percentage that's doing this productive work stuff, like 20% or 10% of the workforce is doing real work. And they're the ones creating all the value in this money shit stuff. Alright, so now what's happened is, you know, the people live in here. So the owners are basically, this is what creates interest, right? I mean, this is like interest. They're taking on their rental of industry. So the rich, basically, they own the industry. They basically are renting it to the people in terms of they're renting its productivity to us. And we pay them a fee for that rental. You know, but they're not really, you know, well, let's see if we can get to it through the paper. Okay, follow the paper. So anyway, you have this money stuff. So there's this, whatever, there's only 5 trillion of this money stuff. It's not that much. And this real cash thing, you know, the real contract stuff, the good stuff. Then you got this other crap. You got this stock market. And then you got commodities. Yeah, I think we can separate the two. All right, so the owners, you know, this is what they own. They own the commodities, so that's just part of their ownership thing. But they also own a big, you know, they own this stock stuff. And this stock stuff is made out of what? Right? I mean, that's the trick, right? It's like this huge amount of paper that says this is worth a certain amount of this money. So this paper is somehow an IOU on this paper. So, I mean, but this thing could be worth, like, let's just make up a number. Let's just say it's worth 100 trillion. All right, in terms of its paper value. Obviously, you couldn't have a cash out value of that. So there's 100 trillion claims on 5 trillion of cash. All right, so that doesn't make too much sense, right? I mean, that's one of those oversold pie kind of things, right? And I guess it's okay as long as nobody's very hungry and nobody's using up their IOU tokens for pie, right? So, I mean, I guess it can work. You can have like 500 claims on 10 pieces of pie as long as no one's in a hurry to eat their pie, right? But as soon as somebody's in a hurry to get their pie, that's all going to fall apart, right? I mean, we can all see that ain't going to work. Alright, so anyway, the stock market is just basically debt money. So it's not any actual value. So when a stock's worth, say, $50, it's really only worth, 50 cents. So it goes from $50 to 50 cents in real assets. So if you took the real, the buildings and the property and the cars and whatever the business owns, it'd be worth 50 cents. But what it says on the bill, what it says on the stock, the lie, is $50. So it's got this hugely overvaluedness to it, because it represents future profits. So if the company doesn't make profits, well, you know, there's no income being generated. There's no dividend to pay the stockholder. But I mean, even when the business is making money, the stockholder still owns this piece of paper that has no real value beyond the fact that the business is making enough money to keep paying the interest. So it's like this ownership thing with a loan. You know, you could have a loan, and I could borrow $5 million, let's say. And so as long as the guy who lends me the $5 million only wants, you know, $3 a week back, you know, I can afford to pay him, you know, because I can just rent the money from him for the fee that he's charging me to hold the money, to hold the $5 million, to have it in my back pocket. And so the rent is manageable. And so the rent being paid to the stockholders is manageable, you know, because they don't need to make much to say, okay, my certificate's so valuable because it's bringing in $5 a week, so it's a good certificate. But realistically, it's a piece of crap. It's just useless. And so anyway, where does all this debt come from, though? I mean, all these stocks represent debt. I mean, it's basically an IOU. It's basically cashable as long as the economy's in good shape. For this cash stuff, you can go and trade your piece of stock paper for $50 and get $50 for it. Even though it's only worth 50 cents, you can get $50. And why is that possible? Well, it's possible because the government borrows money. So we, the people, the workers and the owners, everybody, okay, this whole collective, says let's just borrow some money. You know, we want stuff, so we'll just borrow the money. And obviously they have to borrow it from the rich because the only people have a bunch of this money stuff. They have IOUs anyway, right? So they have paper, okay, that says little numbers on it. Doesn't necessarily mean anything, but that's what they have. And so, like, what happens is the government will issue bonds. So it'll issue a debt bond, and what it's basically just doing is it's saying, okay, you give me money. So it says you have to give me this money stuff. So you can get the money stuff by working, you can get the money stuff by being a crook, or you can have the money stuff because you're an owner. And so the owners just say, okay, I'll just sell some of this stock, right? So they sell it, they get cash, and then they just give cash to the government for the bond, and now they have a new piece of paper that says bond on it. They put that over in their category of what I own. I own a bond, and that's worth money. And they can cash the bond out to go buy the stock back. So they retain what they have, and the government got rid of this thing, this piece of paper. That's another IOU. Right, right? It's just a piece of paper that says this is money, as long as we can pay it back. And so they got, let's just say there's 20 trillion of this crap the government has made. And then personal debt's the same kind of idea. It's just the individual does the same thing. The individual issues a bond, which is takes out a loan. And it's the same thing as just issuing a bond. It's just basically saying, I'll pay you some other day for all this crap because I want it now. And so it's just all credit card money. So all this debt, this 20 trillion of debt the government creates, and all this personal debt that a bunch of these people who aren't making enough money, these workers aren't making enough money, so they borrow money. So let's say they got 40 trillion of that crap. And what that does is it generates all this IOUs. So for all these transactions create IOUs all over the place, IOU paper. And that paper is entirely what generates the value of the stock. Because they use these IOUs, the owners, possessors of these fake pieces of paper, put that stuff in the stock market. So the stock market is entirely made out of debt. The only way the stock market can go up, it went from in my lifetime, it went from 1900 to 12,000, which is really, it's a big grow, right? But to 12,000, so, or whatever it's at now. I mean, it's a big difference, right? 10 times kind of almost number. Not quite, but big increase. And what was commensurate to that big increase? Oh yeah, well in my lifetime we went from, $200 billion in debt to $20 trillion in debt. So it's the same kind of growth in debt. So as much as Republicans have complained, the rich people have been complaining about deficit spending, the fact is deficit spending has made them hugely wealthy, right? Because they keep collecting interest, more income. Income and interest are the same things, okay? They've been making more money, okay? More debt created, more ownership paper, more renting, rent. People are renting their entire life now. They rent their car, they rent their house. Everything's rented. They don't own anything. And they're paying interest on all that stuff. And the rich are just getting richer and richer and richer, just collecting interest, not doing any work, just collecting more interest on this stuff. Their stock market, their stock pays them, and that comes out of the workers' money anyway. So I mean, the workers are paying all of this rent. And it's just this tiny percentage of workers who are doing the real work. So that's the real joke. So you have this tiny percentage that's creating all the value, and that value is being distributed throughout this whole system, and it's feeding the entire. So that's just showing you that we could have just as much productivity in the economy, working a tiny fraction of the hours that people work. You could have a 2-hour work day. And be just as productive as we are now if we just reorganize the way this productivity is distributed. And if more of these loafers, these crooks, were doing productive work instead of crook work, we could all work half as much or a quarter as much. And if we didn't have to pay these owners all this fucking interest, we could cut another couple of hours off our work week. So yeah, it just has to be understood that productive work is paying for all of this economy. There's no other source of real value than productive work. And I mean by productive work, innovating, inventing. Okay, let's be clear. Owners don't invent anything. They don't even know any physics. They don't know shit. They hire people to do it. All right, and hiring people is not brain surgery. Okay, it's not really that hard to look through, to put a want ad in the paper and then have guys show up and tell you how they know what they're doing, and you go, well, yeah, that guy knows what he's doing better than that guy. Then, that's not really work. I mean, we'd all love to have that job if we get it, right? The guy who just sits back and says, you're hired or you're fired. I mean, wow, that's really rough, right? No, that's really easy. It's really easy to tell smart from dumb. It really is. Anyway, telling you, this is really the worst drawing ever in the history of my drawings, I think. But anyway, the point is that the value, it's about efficiency. Money creates efficiency, but it also creates the ability to play this money game where you don't have you don't make distinctions between the real deal, the real piece of contract paper, and all these fake pieces of contract paper, the stocks and the bonds and the personal credit card. All these debt paper, all these pieces of debt have the same appearance of value as this real deal. And that's a real problem. And I didn't get to commodities, but you know, it doesn't really matter. So commodities are still over here. But that's just the ownership thing. You can figure that one out without too much trouble, right? You own something and then you can just rent it to people. So that's all that commodities basically are. Is they own a contract for a certain amount of something in the futures. You know, futures are called. And what you basically hope to do is to sell what you buy at a higher price. So you hope to sell it in the future for less than you paid for it 6 months ago. So you'll sell it for more in 6 months than what you paid for it 6 months ago. That kind of deal. And that's all commodities are. They're being just exchanged for higher value, so it's just basically rent. You know, they buy the car and then they just rent it out to the civilization, and they collect more money back than they paid out. So it's just more making money for not doing anything productive, just reselling something that had to be sold anyway. They had to be, people have to eat, and they're just basically charging you rent to eat. Yeah. So anyway, but this is where the whole thing falls apart. So let's understand. So when the government shut down all this crap, is they want to start cutting spending. And once they really do cut the borrowing, so once the government stops borrowing $2 trillion a year, this stock market's going down, because this debt is what's going in here. So if in personal debt, people are tapped out, right? Their wages are going down. All right, they're getting competed out of life altogether. So they're even, you know, but they can't borrow any more money, right? They'd like to borrow more money, but they can't really borrow any more money. Okay, people are just, it's preposterous. And the only thing keeping any of their assets, like their overvalued houses and all this other stuff, the only thing keeping any of that stuff valuable is the fact that now the banks are actually buying the houses and renting them overtly. Instead of making silly mortgages, they're just overtly renting them now, because that's all they were doing anyway. So it's just like the owners are just making it known that you're serfs now. Okay, they own, like the lords, they own all the property, and they're just going to rent it to the peasants. And so it's going to become more overt. You know, instead of having some silly mortgage that's really just a rental contract, you'll just have a rental contract. You'll be a official serf. You'll be an official peasant. But that can't save all of this, you know, because you have nowhere else. The personal debt can't grow. The national debt can't grow. You know, I mean, people are just realizing it's preposterous numbers. And the only thing making any of this possible is that they almost have 0% interest rates, you know. So the interest rates on this debt is really low. But as soon as these interest rates go up, this whole thing collapses very fast, because these people won't be able to pay high interest rent, and certainly the federal government won't be able to pay high interest rate. So, but anyway, this debt, now that it's going to stop, this stock market's made out of debt. It's made out of these IOUs. Without these IOUs, this thing can't grow. So this thing is going to stop growing. And then these rich people are going to say, hey, this stuff ain't making no money. I ain't getting no rent on my stock. And so they're going to look for something else to make money off of, because they like to get free money. They like to get rent. So they're going to buy more of these poor people houses and rent it to them, or they're going to buy commodities. So the basic food prices are going to go up, and you know, basic pieces of your life, the commodity stuff, energy and food, the price is going to go up. A higher percentage of this guy's income is going to be paying for that. So he's going to have even less money to spend into the economy. And so there'll be even less, business will be able to make less money, less rent from businesses. So businesses will go out of business. That'll cause unemployment. That'll mean these people can't pay rent. That means the stocks go way down. That means people buy the commodities because the stocks suck. And nobody's going to go near this bond crap, because they know the government can't pay that money back. And then interest rates have to go way up on the bonds, but you can't sell them to anybody because no one's stupid enough to buy them anymore. And so then they have to start giving out a ton of money to get people to buy them. And that's inflation starts because now the government's going to have to print cash. Alright, they're going to have to print this stuff directly. Okay, because they're not going to have any way to function, because they're just not going to be able to make any money anywhere. So anyway, the whole thing is going to turn into this. It's just going to turn into a big frickin' mess. Because no one's paying any attention to what it's really made out of, which is promises on, years and years of labor people can't provide. And so that's another catch to this whole thing. This laborer is becoming less and less able to sell his labor because there's nothing he can do anymore. His value, a human being's value, has gone way, 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 way down. Machines are more valuable than people now as workers. So this guy's capacity to earn, to actually be productive, it's getting harder and harder and harder to find a niche to fit yourself into where you can actually produce something of value. Machines are better at growing food. Lots of things are just better done by a machine. And so, yeah, where's your generator of value then? The owners are just going to pay the machines to consume the product. Yeah, it's going to get really weird. They're going to make money getting the machines to borrow money on a credit card. And certainly there's no threat if you force the machine to work an extra 3 years. But there's a real threat when you ask a human being who's working 8 hours a day already, and you say to him, you have to work another 5 hours a day. I mean, that's going to start killing the poor little humans. But that's the only way they can pay back this money. They're going to have to work for like 10 years, an extra 3 hours a day for these guys, these productive guys, to pay back all this money. Because nobody else is going to pay it back. The crooks aren't going to pay it back, the welfare bums aren't going to pay it back, and the rich aren't going to pay it back. So none of those people are going to pay it back. So the only guy left to pay it back is this bum here, this little sucker, Mr. Productive Worker. And they're going to bleed him until he's dry. And they still can't pay all this back. I mean, it's a huge amount of $20 trillion, huge amount of money. Preposterous amount of work you have to do. And yeah, so that's the whole thing's doomed to failure because they've migrated too many of the claims of ownership of the economy have migrated into the hands of too few people over here in the little rich pile. And they own everything now. They have all these IOUs, and they have so many claims on pieces of the real pie that you have for every little piece you have a claim that says you have one piece of pie. They have 100 claims for 100 pieces of pie for every one of your one claim. So you're going to get bargained out of ever getting a piece of the pie. And so yes, the rich man's IOUs are going to go down in value, but he's still going to have so many of them that your value is going to have to go down to nothing and he's still going to outbid you because he has so many claims on this cash and that you're fucked. So anyway, human beings are fucked in this economy, and the only thing, everything's fucked. The whole thing's fucked because it was stupid. It's stupid to sit there and run an economy on promises on future labor. That's just really, really dumb. And that's what they did. And it's dumb. That's like selling your babies like 10 years before you have one. It's just stupid. I mean, still, it would make more sense because at least the baby's a real thing. But they've sold, like I said, they've made contracts, on things that this guy can't even produce. This guy can never be productive enough to pay back the debt. He just can't. Alright, so anyway. So that's the story. And such. Until next time. I'll do a better job, maybe. Possibly. Or worse. It's a pretty color anyway, purple. It's a nice purple. Okay. We'll put that in the archive. So, until next time. Button.